Professor Todd Margolis in the house. BJJ, gi no gi, MMA champ, and singer. I think that's what it says on your Instagram.
That's true. That's true. And wrestler.
A wrestler.
Or wrestler, as we talk.
Said state champ.
Correct. 1994, going back a few years.
Damn.
Right?
Did you grow up wrestling?
No. I grew up playing football, like most American kids, right? We watched football in the 80s and 90s, and then I had knee surgery. My brother's football coaches were also the wrestling coaches in high school. And so he started wrestling, and then I was 2 years younger than he. And so then I started wrestling the following year. So that was my 8th grade year that I started.
You grew up in Maryland?
Yeah, Southern Maryland. So a small town called Port Tobacco. I was born in La Plata, and it's about an hour, about 50 miles outside of Washington, D.C.
Cool.
So it's pretty country, and I grew up on the river out there, and so it was awesome. I mean, it was good country life. Not like so rural that I didn't have any neighbors, but nothing like urban.
Nice. And how'd you find jiu-jitsu?
So that was 1997, and a guy named Chris Doyle. I was working for my uncle and for his construction company. A guy named Chris Doyle, who my uncle asked if I could sleep in his house for a weekend. He's like, my nephew just needs a weekend. And I think like 8 years later, I left. So it was a really long weekend that I spent at his house, and so he was doing jiu-jitsu, and he was in his 40s at the time, and around 40. And Mario Yamasaki was the.
Were you in high school still?
No. I was 3 years out. So it was 1997. I graduated in 94. So I was like 2.5 years out, and it was I was 19 or 20 years old at the time. And so I went in there, and I remember getting choked and armbarred, and I thought, all right, I'm gonna do this for 3 months, just so I can kick everybody's butt in here, and then I'm done, because I don't want to compete anymore. I'm tired of cutting weight. That's why I didn't wrestle in college. Blah blah blah. And so anyway, I start, and then it's like, I'm like, all right, now I just want to beat everybody. And then the competitive thing kicked in, and I'm like, I'm not competing. And Mario's like, you got to compete in the tournament. So I go to the first tournament, like, I'm not competing. And I watch the tournament, I'm like, I can beat all these guys. And back then, like, in 97, like, you didn't even see blue belts,
Right. Did they have white belt divisions?
Yeah, well, that was all there was, right, at local tournaments.
Because out here in California, like in 1995, I think it was, 95, they didn't have blue belt divisions. So I had to, they didn't have white belt divisions. So they only had blue belt and up. It was all blue belts. Yeah, but there weren't that many color belts. Yeah.
Yeah, like a purple belt. I remember the first purple belt I met was Lloyd, right? And it was like, oh my God, Rome is but a whisper. You saw him and you were like, oh my God, that guy's a purple belt. Don't tell anybody.
I know, purple belts were.
Go shake his hand. See if we'll talk to you. But I mean, there was lore back then. There was this mystique to it. And
forget about a black belt, right?
Where? Like, other than our coach, Mario Yamasaki, who wasn't like a legendary black belt, and he was more of a great leader and communicator and really just an amazing guy because, he wasn't known for his jiu-jitsu prowess, his technical prowess. And there was even some controversy over where he got his belt and how he got his belt and all that kind of stuff. And he's a really neat guy because, and I'm grateful to Mario.
Who did he get his black belt from?
Well, supposedly like Marcelo Bering, but of course he was dead, so nobody could confirm it, man. Right? So like, and then, there was a lot of like, and really, I was beating Mario from like blue belt. Once I was
but there would be some guys that would vouch that he came up with, right?
Who was there to challenge? You're talking about 1997 in DC.
Right. I guess in the U.S., yeah.
He was the only black belt. And he was so personable. He's such a charismatic, amazing guy. Like, there was nobody to challenge it. And his brother was good, but his brother was in Brazil, and they came from a very famous judo family. Like, his grandfather was a referee in the Olympics, and so he had this high-level judo, and his jiu-jitsu was kind of questionable. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're a good blue, purple belt in jiu-jitsu and a black belt in judo,
Back in those days.
you're a freaking wizard.
Yeah.
I mean, you got magic sauce. You can whip everybody's ass. So, and he was tough, right?
Yeah,
and he's likable. Like, everybody loved him. And he wasn't afraid to fight. I mean, you know, so like he had all of the right things to really launch jiu-jitsu in Washington, D.C. I mean, he's the father of it. He brought Leo Dalla, and then Lloyd broke off and went with Leo Dalla. And so anyway, so I was like, all right. I went to the next tournament, and I entered, and I won. I beat a guy named Jeff Ruth, who was Lloyd Irvin's like top guy. Lloyd was a purple belt at the time. And that was my first encounter with Lloyd. And then, so I got my blue belt in 3 months. And then
3 months?
3 months, yeah. And then next year, I went to the Blue Belt World Championships in Brazil, my first year in Brazil. That was 1999.
Okay.
And I won 3 matches, I think. Yeah, I won 3 matches. I wish I had these on video because I hit 3 knee bars in 1999. That blue belt. That blue belt. And I was watching.
Before they made all the rules.
Well, they made
the raping. You could reap. You could knee bar. You could.
They made that rule because of me. You know, they didn't say it, but I mean that's a footnote in history that deserves to be noted. Like I just commented. I saw Jiu-Jitsu Giant, you know, on Danaher's team.
Yeah,
he just hit that straight knee bar, and I was like, freaking beautiful. I love people hitting. I mean, that is a great way to pass half guard. Is always threaten that knee bar. I hit that on so many people. I hit it 3 times in the Blue Belt Worlds. Broke a guy's knee, and then the next week they banned it. And so I mean, you know, I didn't get credit in the notebook
books.
of jiu-jitsu, but I'd like it. I mean, if the matches are there, and so and then in my next match, I didn't give up a point in that blue belt, and I was winning, and Mario was like, slow down, because I had this really go wrestler's attitude.
Yeah.
And I stopped in open guard, and I got the no arm triangle with a hand in a collar, and I freaking had to tap with like it had to be less than 15 seconds left in the match, man. And then that guy won it, and then that was it. And so since 1999, I've been one away from a medal at the World Championships. I think like 4 times, which is a little frustrating.
So that was. Did you medal? No. Your quarterfinals. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I won 3 matches. It was a big group, so 3 or 4 matches. It was either 5 or 6 to win.
Back in those days, it was I'm saying probably the same as now, like 7 matches to win. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you had to qualify. I mean, there's some years where you didn't have to, but now
they did.
Now
back then, the Brazilians had to qualify. The Americans didn't.
Oh, I had to qualify because I was living down there those years. You know, 98, 99.
Yeah.
So.
And that was cool. And Mario took us down there and showed us all around. And those are great.
Have you seen that Ted movie that they came out with on HBO Max?
I haven't. I need to watch it, but I haven't. So
you have to do like a VPN and get the the HBO Max Brazil. And then it's not subtitled. It's like what do you call it when they do a voiceover?
Oh yeah.
They did a voiceover in English. You know, I wish they would have just done a subtitle thing, but they did a voiceover. But it was really cool that had Yamasaki in there because he organized a lot of stuff for Eduardo Teles to bring Terere out to do like seminars and stuff.
Right.
Because he was really connected.
And that's the thing about Mario is that Mario, I mean, he brought in.
And Teles in the movie is like, yeah, don't mess around. Like Yamasaki's really straight guy, you know, square guy. He called him.
He, I remember he brought in Joe Moriera, Marco Huas, Valiji Ishmael. For Mother's Day a couple of days ago, I took my wife. She wanted to go to the Pancake House, and I said, "Man, I haven't been here since like 2000 when Valiji Ishmael was here." And I remember it was after he had beaten Hoyce, and I remember he ate egg whites. That was the thing that I remembered. You know, he was tough as nails.
No pancakes, just egg whites.
He just wanted egg whites. He was very particular. I only want egg whites in my omelet. And of course, then I wanted to start eating egg white omelets because, you know, this guy just choked out Hoyce. And I'm like, I don't like egg whites. I want the yolk. You know what I mean? I want a little more flavor.
Yeah, man. That was people were back on the yolks now, right?
Yeah. But that was the thing. Like, you know, when you were coming up.
You copy.
You saw this guy champion that was doing this in this sport.
It
wasn't like YouTube and there was nothing, you know? You remember we used to wait for like Ed Clay, I think, had Submission Fighter magazine.
Correct.
And the Gracie magazine, and we would go to Barnes and Noble. Like we had to wait to find out results of things that happened in bookstores, or for somebody to call somebody because if it happened in Brazil, you weren't hearing about it right away in the U.S. There was no voice over IP.
Yeah, I was competing steadily until like the early 2000s, 2002. I would go down 3 or 4 times a year for all the major tournaments.
Right.
And I would get all the magazines. And there was this guy, Paqueta. Do you know Paqueta? He was a Carlson Gracie black belt.
Okay.
And he would VHS record all the matches, like the Brazilian Nationals and the Worlds and everything. And so that guy had these VHS tapes, and you'd find him, and you'd like walk to his car, and you would buy the VHS tapes off of him, and then you'd bring them back, and you'd, study the techniques, study the footage,
Right.
And
the grainy footage.
Yeah, and I even brought like my big camera. And I would record too.
Right.
And try to, but
sometimes you get in trouble for that though.
Yeah. So, but I was like, because I lived there.
I remember we used to sneak them into Tijuca Tennis Club, and you try to get like a little like snippet of something.
Yeah, the Worlds was like and I was friends with a lot of the the Brazilian guys because I lived down there, but
because you were Brazilian, which is why I never talked to you.
We've known each other, right? Of each other for like so many years, and it was until the stem cells that were like, holy, oh shit,
oh, you speak English. I swore you were Brazilian. I watched you compete. I'm like, you're Baja Gracie. You were winning matches. They were scoring your matches appropriately. They weren't cheating you. You have to be Brazilian. Like, I'm not talking to that guy. I'm just not talking to him. He's not American. He's Brazilian. He's on the other side.
Yeah, I totally immersed myself into everything.
You did, man. You had the look and everything.
I competed in all the local tournaments too. So I knew all the guys, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the refs actually were from Gracie Baja in those days, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the guys were.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. It's like I was floored that you were American.
Saulo Ribeiro and all those guys too. Like they, I grew up, there. I was always together, like at all the tournaments. We knew each other. So
no, you were in it, man. Yeah. I don't know anybody who was more in it than you. Like looking back, you were so in it, it didn't feel like you were in it because you know what I'm saying? It wasn't, there was nothing about you that came across like you were a gringo down living in Brazil. Like Daryl Golar and other guys that you knew were gringos hanging down there, man. I was for sure that you were Brazilian.
Yeah, it was interesting, right?
And your jiu-jitsu was so damn good. So, like, you backed it up. So, you know what I mean? There was nothing to... So funny, though.
So funny. Yeah, I went to Rio first, right? And then I moved to a city called Belo Horizonte.
In the north, yeah.
The third largest city. So it's inland a little bit, right? And I started to train with Draculino. And then he was just starting his gym. But later on, right, ended up being like a powerhouse with all these black belt world champions and everything else. But it was the early days, and it was just whites and blues. And Gracie Baja was like the
Forget about it.
Yeah, like all the different weight categories was stacked with world champs.
Right. Yeah, we would get a chance sometimes to go over there and train. And I went over to Saulo's gym. He had a little place in Copacabana, and there was another guy who was
Saulo's gym was in Copacabana?
He had a little gym there, yeah, that was under him. And what about Oswaldo Alves? Do you remember him?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, he was a freaking monster. I got to do some stuff with him.
Oh, cool.
Like, there's just...
Rest in peace,
So, yeah, that guy was,
He's old school. He brought all those guys from Manaus, the Fred Paixão, the Jacarés. It seemed like, so many people.
Yeah, I remember learning stuff from him, like even at I think at the Pans. What did Teddy do some stuff with him? And maybe I just saw him at a tournament and they were all talking and he was showing some techniques and stuff, and like just really neat guys in history that don't get a lot of credit for really bringing the sport forward, being forward thinkers. He was one of those guys that Anyways, it was cool times. It was really cool times. It was magical.
So going back to Yamasaki, you getting into jiu-jitsu, you winning the tournament, and then what was the trajectory towards? You went to Brazil, right? You won some matches, and then I think that's where we stopped off.
Yeah. So then I just kept winning, and then I got my purple belt right after the blue belt worlds in Brazil, and then I made it to the Pans purple belt finals, and I didn't realize now until like a year ago or 2 years ago that I wrestled Braulio Oshima again in the final.
Okay.
Man, I wrecked some people in that tournament, and I popped a rib in that final that tournament was freaking sick. Like that purple belt class that I was in had Hodger Gracie, had just a Braulio, Fabricio Verdum. Like it was a
Stacked, yeah. It's
crazy.
You look back at the podiums and
it was
the name, but the podiums, right? Kind of that's all that's left,
right. And so I'd love to find that because I heard that I beat like they're like, you got the best guy in the first round, and I freaking beat him. And then I beat Igor Gracie like in the second or third round, and I didn't even know. And I beat him like 12-0 or something, right? And for an American to beat a Gracie by that, like like it was no, you know what I'm saying? It's indisputable.
For sure.
And when I got off the mat, they're like, "Dude, you beat a Gracie." And as history would have it,
back in those days was you being an American too.
The first
was crazy. First American, okay.
The first American to beat a Gracie in the gi, right? And so, and I was like, and I remember coming off the mat, and they're like, "Dude, you just beat a Gracie," and I was like, "Thank God you didn't tell me that before the match, right? Thank God you didn't tell me before the match, because I just went out there and just wrestled, just did what I needed to do."
Yeah.
And but man, I'd love to get like that bracket. And then so Braulio came down and he hit me in a sweep, and I tried to stop it. And again, coming to what we're talking about now, like with the Margolis shrimp, and if you don't fear the mount, you don't fear the sweep, right? And so back then I feared the mount. I tried to stop the sweep. I popped a rib. And then I'm thinking about the rib, and I just let my arm go because I'm like, oh, crap. And then he popped my elbow on top of it. So because I wasn't even like, you're not thinking about tapping because you're thinking about something else, like the match is over in your head, right? And which was dumb on my part. And so anyway, that I actually took a picture of one of your 2001 Pan Am medals because I'm going to get one made because I tossed that one out the window on the ride home. I was so mad I don't have that one anymore. But I want to make another one.
One of our black belts from Dracolinos, he used to make the world's all the IBGF medals. Maybe you could ask him. He could maybe find.
Oh, that'd be sick. And I'm pretty sure it was 2001 was that year. But yeah, I'd love to have. I'd like to get that one made so I could have that back in the. My friend stopped the car, went and picked it up, and had it framed for me at Michael's. And then when I finally picked it up, they're like, "Dude, we have a 1-year policy. You're 2 weeks too late. We just threw it out." So it was like,
no way.
It's my fault for throwing it out the window. I was so mad though. I was sure I was gonna win. And then brown belt. What happened? Oh, brown belt worlds was a crazy thing. So I'm down there by myself in Brazil, and I wrestled a tough match. I think my ribs were still hurting me, and so I wasn't training, and I was just running. So I went down there, and I legitimately. Oh, let's go to purple belt worlds. Purple belt worlds. I'm freaking maul this guy. I pick him up in the air. I maul him. I get up. They raise the other guy's hand. Hoyler Gracie comes running out on the mat, screaming at the referee, and
he was defending you,
defending me, man.
Yeah.
And the guy had his head down, making
he robbed you. Basically,
yeah,
which used to happen a lot.
What can I do? And he's like, yeah, this American. He's apologizing to me profusely, like, I'm so, man, I'm so sorry. You're a great fighter. You come down here all this way. This shouldn't happen. I'm so sorry. And I was just stoked to meet Hoyler Gracie. I never met him before. I was like, oh my God. Like, you remember we had the disposable cameras back then? I'm like, somebody get a picture. Somebody get a picture. And I told him this story recently, and I saw him at the ADCCs, and he didn't remember it. So, I mean, it apparently wasn't as memorable for him as it was for me. It wasn't like he tells the story now on podcasts, like, that time I met Todd Margolis, Todinho, gringo casca groca, porra. He apparently it wasn't, but it just showed the character, his, the level of character to come out there and to fight for me, because he didn't know me from anybody. Yeah. And so anyway,
he wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to do the right thing.
Right. Yeah.
That's all we ask for, as a fair thing.
Yeah. So that was sick. And then brown belt worlds, I legitimately lost. I was losing, I think, by an advantage, and then I ended up having to give up the sweep because he was like gonna get the advantage for almost being on top of me. So then I lost 2-0, and then I went into the absolute, and I was supposed to fight Rock and Roll Elvis Sinasek in the first match.
Okay. Australia UFC, yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I go, and the metro's closed. I was going to take the metro. Well, the metro in Brazil is closed on Sunday. So it was a Sunday. I get to the metro, it's closed. I'm like, oh, crap. So I have to run back to my hotel. I have to try to find a taxi. Well, a lot of things are closed on Sunday. So then I didn't have any money. and I couldn't get like any money right away. So I found a
Who were
taxi
you
cab
with?
driver. I was by myself.
No other teammates or anything?
No, I'm in Brazil by myself, right? Crazy stuff I used to do, right? We just running around Brazil by myself.
No coach,
Nothing.
no teammates, nothing.
Just by myself.
I'm going to go to Brazil. I'm going to compete and
I'm going to win. And if
that's
not,
it.
I'm going to party, right? But I'm going to party either way. I might win. I'm definitely going to party. Like partying's happening. Winning, not so sure. Definitely going to win the party. So I got a story about that too, man. I found like a Hoist Gracie story, so you know that's true. And when Hoist Gracie knows about the party, like you crazy motherfucker, man, crazy motherfucker. Everybody in Brazil knows Margolis is a crazy motherfucker. And I'll tell that story. And so so I get a taxi cab driver. And you can't make this stuff up, right? You can't make this stuff up. So I'm like, I have like a DVD of me like competing, like a Grappler's Quest DVD, a couple t-shirts and a little bit of money. Cause I had no money to like, I needed to exchange money, but like I couldn't find a place to exchange money. And so I went to like a hotel to try to exchange money.
Grappler's Quest DVD.
Yes. A Grappler's Quest DVD. Right. And so I gave the guy like a t-shirt, Grappler's Quest DVD and a little bit of money that I had. And he's like, I'll take you to Baja Tijuca, right? Because I had to take a taxi cab. So I got all my gear, I got all my crap. We're freaking coming into like Tijuca, and his car runs out of gas. The guy's freaking car runs out of gas. Like, I'm no bullshit. Like, we're pushing it into the gas station. I'm jumping out. I'm pushing the guy's freaking car into the gas station. He gets gas. We get back in the car. He takes me to Tijuca. I go running in there. And they're like, oh, we disqualified you 3 minutes ago. We called your name too many times, and you got disqualified. So I went through all of that. Didn't get to wrestle Elvis Sinisek, which would have been a good match. He had good jiu-jitsu. That would have been fun.
Good matchup for you though.
Yeah, really good matchup for me. And like, damn. So that was brown belt. Then black belt. So I got my black belt in 5 years, and then I got it in like February, March. And from Pedro Sauer, because I had left Mario Yamasaki. And then I went to, I was going to go with Lloyd. So Mike Moses, Nakapan Fungaforn, who's still competing at a high level. And, like Murillo Santana was, so all these guys were my training partners. So like, I look at Murillo, I see my game. I see my knee cut. I see my pass. I see my top pressure. Now, obviously, he's gotten a lot better, and he's very, very good. But the core fundamentals of his pressure passing game were all my game coming up, and and so, it's fun to watch him and see him and see like that little imprint that, that knee cut, the stuff that I did with Margarita and my outside in knee cut.
Yeah, because Yamasaki brought Margarita to Maryland, right?
Correct. And
that was a big deal. Purple belt, right?
Correct. And I worked with Margarito on his wrestling and inside trips and, throws and trained with him a lot. And he was a freaking just different level athlete, just a monster.
And people that don't know, like, you don't hear about him a lot these days, but he like dominated, won the open weight. Like, he was in a motorcycle accident.
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, he submitted everybody too.
Submitted everybody,
yeah.
He put Saulo Barrow in the finals. That took away Saulo.
Who had never been submitted before.
Right.
Right.
In the finals of the open weight.
And then they wrestled again in the finals of his weight and in the finals of the open weight. They literally, that match, if you go watch, is not 10 minutes. They saw he was going to get submitted again, and they called time early. Like it's, that's my belief anyway. We can go back and see it, but because Margarita had this killer knee on baseball choke.
Yeah,
he just baseball choke you.
Like
Basics.
cross choke.
Yeah, like he did to Fabio Gurgel, right? First time that he had ever been submitted. That was right. That was against Gurgel at the Pan Americans, and I use that as like a teaching point when Fabio Gurgel puts his knee on the ground, and that's when things go south, right? When we talk about structure, we talk about our triangles.
Fabio Gurgel is one of the founders of like Alliance, right? One of the great coaches.
Exactly. Yeah, Marcelo Garcia's coach, isn't he? He comes from Alliance.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's all these amazing guys. I mean, there's a slew of them. I mean, he's a legend.
He also fought early Valitudo. Representing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, legend, right? And true pioneer, brilliant guy, nice guy too. And but he came into the pants, and Margarita just basic choke. He had gorilla grips, man. He'd get his hand in the collar, he'd pull triangle, choke, pull triangle, choke, pull triangle. I mean, freaking basic stuff, man. Omoplatas, basic, but very hard to stop. And he had a motor on him too, you know.
He wouldn't stop, yeah.
He wouldn't stop. And he didn't drink or anything
I
back
got
then.
his collar drag. I remember studying his collar drag, and I started doing his collar drag.
Yeah.
Butterfly guard.
Yeah, yeah.
Open guard, there's space, boom.
And he was a sponge like no other. Like literally, he would kill everybody in the room, and all he would do is ask me about my stuff. I tell Margarita, well, show me. Oh, wait. Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, show me this first right here. No, your takedowns. No, show me your takedown, your drag trip. Yeah, show me this in front of me. Like, and of course, you know, I like to teach, so I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And then I realized at the end of an hour, like, he didn't teach me anything. Like, he's right, he cheated me out of everything, and I couldn't beat him up. So like, I was just stuck. It's a horrible feeling. I felt like a helpless little creature, little bunny rabbit on a farm. But he was awesome. So I would watch him because I'm a good learner by watching, and I'd watch like where he'd put his feet, where he'd put his hands. And although he didn't always want to teach you a lot, he just wanted to train. If you just sat back and you just look for the little details.
I would study his game.
Where he'd put his feet, how he did things. I'd tell you one of the guys that beat him that was really good was rock and roll, what's his name? Nino Shembri. Nino Shembri beat him. You ever see that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he swept him. Nino Shembri's got that over that butterfly guard where he goes over and he hooks the belt and then he clamps his elbow down. He taught that at Lloyd's one time. Very clever. And there's like knee positioning. I'll show some of that today. Like for me, I boiled it down to be the ball, right? And where your knees be the ball, right? So from the butterfly guard, a lot of people open their knees really wide. I don't like to do that because you're a flat surface trying to roll, right? If you open your knees too wide, you become more like a square and less like a ball. So I want my knees just up outside the ribs. Now, there's nuance because if you bring your knees too closely, guys will hip switch and pass. So that, you know, there's nuance. It's a delicate place that you got to figure out. But if you open your knees too much and the guys just do that body lock pass on you, well, that's because you didn't maintain a ball. If I want to roll you like a ball, I need to be a ball. And so Nino, when he showed me, he turns a little bit on his side. He gets that knee right in your rib. And he didn't explain it this way, but now, after doing it so many years and trying to analyze it, it makes sense. Like he maintained that ball posture. He clamped down. He put his elbow outside of his own knee and just clamped. There's no way to go over. And if you go back and watch that match, I think he swept Margarita twice. You know, like sweeping Margarita twice, who freaking passed Pejapano's guard and submitted him in DC. You know, he passed Salo's guard and submitted him. I mean, you know, Jean Malao, you remember him?
Yeah, Jean Malao swept him too. Yeah. He beat Jean Malao beat Margarita too with deep half before it was called deep half. Right. But and that's why. But Margarita was going inside out, and that's one of the reasons that we changed to an outside in knee cut, because Margarita used to have an inside out knee cut, and we looked at that and said, all right. Well, what's happening? Well, what's happening is that his hips were on top of Jean Malao's hips, and that's why he would bump him and then get him to go. Now, Margarita broke both his wrists. Outside in and inside out.
So if we're thinking about, like, I want to start from your knees and have my knee drive into your hips. I don't want my foot to start in between your legs, my knee to shoot out away from your body while I'm driving my hips. That's how 99% of people pass the guard. Well, if you're in somebody who's deep and they're tight, you're putting all your weight on that person, which means if they move, you move. And I don't want that. I want the majority of my weight coming from a different angle. Okay? So I want my knee facing the person's hips. I want my knee pointed to the person's hips and belly.
Gotcha.
And then I find a point on the ground to ground myself, and I call it the tether ball. Like I plant it in the ground and it becomes a tether ball that I can rotate on. But that was something that I worked on and you know, and looked at, and you know, watching Margarita and talking with Margarita about changing to that outside inside knee cut, because when you do inside out, you tend to be a little heavy on the other person, which is how he got swept. There's a couple times. So
right, so like you do like that quarter guard, whatever they want to call it, you know. So kind of like going into the mount, and then you turn the guy's hips and then you're from that you're able to do your knee slice from that. Once you control the guy, dominated him upstairs on the.
Yeah, and the thing is that when you do an inside out or an outside in knee cut, so like I'm starting from the knee and I'm driving towards your hips, you actually plaster his whole leg on the ground because you have a lot more contact patch with your leg on top of his leg. Now, how is he going to hip escape if he can't move that leg? If I nail your right knee to the mat, how are you going to slide to your left? You can't.
Yeah.
Right? And so as opposed to just putting, this X cross pressure on top of you, I want to have almost a parallel pressure
hips,
on that leg. And I have one foot on one side of the leg and I have my knee on the other side of the leg. So I've locked that leg in. Now locking that leg in now dominates the hips, right? I don't need to control the hips because it's honestly hard to control the hips. If I try to just put my knee on your hip to control your hip from that position, it's difficult. So that's an interesting little kind of piece of the development of my knee cut, and with Margarita and stuff like that, a little piece of the history that I hadn't thought about in a long time. So thank you for that. All right. So
his knee slice was like, he's just unstoppable.
Oh, it was unstoppable. Oh, so what's his name? What was I saying? The guy that swept him twice.
Not John Malone. Who was it?
Rock and roll. He fought in like Pride and stuff like that too. I don't know. I just lost his name. But anyway, so his butterfly guard is keeping the knees up. Nino Shembri, right? His butterfly guard and bringing over is really, really amazing. So you have that piece of history, right? So then we go, I got my black belt. I made it to the Pan Am finals. I beat, along the way, Amal Easton, right?
Okay.
To, he or I would have been the first black belt American finalist at that time. So I was lucky to have that win. And, and at the time there wasn't a lot of information.
Semifinals?
That was in the semifinals.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And so then I wrestled Paulo Gilobel, and I won that match, like hands down. I won that match.
That was the finals.
Yeah. I passed his guard for 30 seconds.
Okay.
And the crowd was booing. I mean, I literally passed his. It's online.
Yes, you showed it to us.
I passed it for 30 seconds, and I got no points.
Yeah.
And I lost 2-0, right? And so, and so that's that. So that was, and then that 3 years later, Rafael Lovato won, and I beat Rafael Lovato though when he was younger though, in the brown belt absolute at Grapplers Quest.
Pre-Salo Ribeiro.
I tried to footlock him, man. He has big feet. I was like strong, but it was fun. He was probably like 19 at the time, 19 or 20.
I started seeing you because Brian Simmons did really good at marketing you for and all the Grapplers Quest stuff.
Yeah,
and you competed like, it seemed like
all the time.
Month. Yeah,
I was competing a lot. Yeah,
everywhere.
So I was one of the first guys, like specifically on the East Coast as a purple belt. I beat my first black belt. Like all those tournaments.
Because you beat all these ADCC champs. Like you beat all these world champs. Like I remember just seeing that, in those magazines, like the Submission Fighter, all the local American kind of.
Yeah. I tapped out Popovich. His first match after beating Marcelo Garcia and winning Abu Dhabi. I dropped him 169.
Wow.
Yeah, and I submitted him, took him down, and then we went for footlocks, traded footlocks, and then I was lucky to catch him in a triangle, and that was that. I beat Sean Williams that day too. I beat him like 10-0, and then I beat a lot of guys. Like I beat Rick Migleries. I beat Joe D'Arcy. I beat at the Abu Dhabis. Guys I lost to a couple times were like David Terrell, stud.
Yeah.
And
the matchup, right? Takedowns and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, what happened in the Abu Dhabi final?
Is that who you lost to in the finals?
Yeah.
The trials?
Yeah. And the thing was, it was 20 minutes. And if it were 10 minutes, I think I would have fought well enough that I would have gotten an invite to Abu Dhabi. But because it was 20 minutes and there was no points in the first 10 minutes, there was no reason for me to try to do anything in my mind, right? But what happened was they looked at me as a boring fighter. They didn't go back and look at what got me to the finals. It's like, dude, 20 minutes. Like, this is...
You should have sent them a YouTube. It was before YouTube, right?
Right.
Of you singing or something.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, like one thing that I'm proud of is that I generally don't lose the same way twice, you know? So one thing I learned from that second match, like I got tired and David Terrell caught me in a Kimura as I was like shrimping in from side body. Well, I learned from that anytime that I turn to shrimp into somebody, you know, because we keeping our hands down, I always bring my hands up to prayer position before. So instead of like I'm here and I turn and I expose my arm, like I brought my hands in. So that was an adjustment that I've made, and I've never been Kimura'd since then, you know, in a tournament. I got, you know, flying triangled by Jacare, right? I was like, okay, I learned something from that. But I hit him in a throw. I hit him in a drop Seoinage. Like people don't
really,
they don't know that piece, right? I went foot sweep drop Seoinage
back in his day,
and he did a cartwheel. Yeah, when he was at the top, and so that's why he did a flying triangle. Like he respected my takedown game. I don't know how he's like a wizard, man, because they said he balanced on his head because I threw it beautiful, man, and he caught himself and then we went out of bounds. I'd like to get a copy of that match. I'd like to get a copy of that podium, right? You have me, Ted Ade, took second to Jacare, and Leo Vieira.
Wow.
I want that picture.
Wow.
That's a picture
Yeah.
that somebody has. The IBJJF, they have that photo somewhere. I want that photo. I need to get that photo.
What year was it?
2004 at the Pans. And I was the first American black belt. Absolute
I would
podium.
have to look at maybe some of the Gracie mags, you know?
Yeah.
I bet you one of the Gracie mag guys has it.
They would have to. Somebody's putting that picture was taken.
Yeah.
For sure. Kid Peligro.
That was in black belt?
somebody.
Black belt?
Black belt.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, 2004, yeah.
So 2003, and 2003 was when I wrestled Pejapano. Okay. And I went down and I took Pejapano and took his back.
This is open weight?
Yeah. They're like, you want Pejapano first match? I'm like, yeah, why not? They're like, all right.
That what year was
Carlinius was like, nuts, right? You know, and so I not Carlinius. Who's the guy that runs it?
Carlinius, yeah, Carlos Gracie Jr.
Yeah, but the other guy that's like his right hand.
CD, like Marcelo.
Yeah. Super nice guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. So they put me against him, and you know, I don't think
Sid DM, like we call him.
I don't think they gave me the takedown, but I took him down and took his back, and then he got out, and then he tried to pass my guard, and we came back neutral, and then he pulled guard and he swept me, and then he passed. And this rib that's still sticking out to this day is from Pejapano driving his knee through my chest I mean, I was the only person that scored anything on him in that entire tournament. He submitted everybody. But I was 177 pounds for that tournament, wrestling a 250-pound, 260-pound giant. Just to get the takedown to his back was pretty sick as a 5-year black belt with no world-class black belts around me to train with. I mean, it was kind of crazy times, you know? So that was fun. And then I went out and I did the Gracie challenge with those injured ribs, and that's when I wrestled not Henner's brother, Hiron. And I hit
David Avalon was in that as well, right?
Not in that one.
No, okay.
That was a different 4-man with Travis Luter, another stud. And I wrestled David Avalon twice too. The first time, man, he has it online, like a breakdown of like how he beat me with underhooks and stuff like that. It's actually they're smart tacticians, the Avalon brothers. I wrestled the little Avalon, Marcus Avalon. I beat him at Gracie Worlds out in Ohio. That's when I wrestled Shaolin. That match was fire. And
how'd you do Shaolin?
I lost.
Gracie Worlds, you said?
Yeah.
Or
at the
Ohio. Yeah, I went there. Yeah, I went against Shaolin too when I was a brown belt still.
Yeah.
That was back in, when was that? 2000. 2000. That was 2000.
Wow. Sick.
He was already a 3-time black belt world champion.
You were so ahead of the game. Man.
Yeah, that's crazy. Whew, man, that's 23 years ago.
So I shot in and I took him down. He hit like an immediately like switch and cut the corner. It was, I thought I was like, because the referee kept going 2 reversal, and I'm wrestling going, well, you can't have a reversal without the versal.
What's crazy is you were competing at that weight, right?
I dropped to 65
for
that.
Yeah, 165 pounds.
Yeah, everybody was like solo. Everybody, they're
wow.
like, Margolis dropped to 65. I lost 26 pounds in 3 days or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Wow.
And then, we weighed in like 2 days before. So I wrestled. I was probably like 182 or something, like 17 pounds heavier. and then at least 177. Like I was probably 12 to 15 pounds heavier when we actually competed. And but you know, I recently they put the match up and I watched it and like he won that match. He didn't win it the way that they said he didn't pass my guard. As soon as he like jumped past and I came out and we went to front headlock and I shucked him out of bounds because it was tight, by the way. And so they gave him 3 past the guard, 2 flee in the mat. I'm like, man, like, what do you want me to do? Let him just put the choke on me, you know? So then I shoot in on him and he goes to cut the corner. I make an adjustment from the first one. I put my head on the inside so that he can't cut the corner. Because if your head's on the outside, then you can cut the corner. So I like adjusted my head inside, lifted up, came out the back door. He runs off the mat appropriately. Like, what's he supposed to do? Let me take him down? And they're like, and I'm like, no, that's fleeing the mat. Like, if I'm fleeing the mat, that's fleeing the mat. If you can't leave the mat escaping a bad position, that's fleeing the mat. The referee's like, yeah, just wrestle. It's good, my friend. It's okay. Yeah. So I was mad, and it ended up being 8-0 the match, and I was pissed. I thought it should have been 2-2. Looking back, like now that I've seen it, I can give him the 2. I didn't settle the takedown for sure. I didn't settle the takedown. So if I lost 2-0, I'm all right with that.
That's really cool, man. You got to experience those early times because that was during the Arnold Schwarzenegger event. What was it called? What was it called? The Arnold Classic.
Yeah.
So they had a grappling event, and so they had some money with money prizes, which was like very rare.
Right.
Like, it was like $3,000 or something.
Or, up to
for
5,000.
first place. Yeah, something like that. And so everybody, the best of the best. Like, you know, that's why I went out there in the 2000. But it was cool. That was like the early part of like jiu-jitsu in America was like the big deal, right? Arnold Worlds, right? They even called it. And then you know they moved the Worlds over to the U.S. from Brazil, from Tijuca Tennis Club in 2007. Right. So you got to go and compete down there back in the when was it 2003, 4?
All of my competitions, my 5 competitions were all
in Brazil.
99, like 2000, 2001, 2003, 4, and 5. Or I think there was only 1 year that I didn't compete.
So that was nice. That's pretty special, right? Because after 2007 and after, it was in Long Beach, right? But before that, it was still raw with the pigeons inside the Tijuca Tennis Club, the bathrooms. Right. Remember the bathrooms?
Yeah. I still have nightmares. And they had all the drums, Margolis, and all that kind of stuff, or you know, like all the drumming and chanting and
man in the movie, the Tereré movie, you know, why did they go tereré? Well, that chant, where did that come from?
I don't know.
Right? So I didn't know that either. And so I watched the movie, and remember that song, Whoop, There It Is? Whoop, There It Is? And so I guess he was listening to it, and he kept repeating it, but he didn't understand the words. So he just said, ooh, like, ooh, tereré. He kept singing it, like, and it sounded like, ooh, tereré. And so they kind of, like, they got that chant from that.
I had no idea.
Whoop, there it is. So he said, whoop, tereré. Like,
yeah, that was sick, man.
And so that's how he got the name Tereré. Also.
Really? Because he was trying to say, ooh, there it is.
Ooh, there it is.
There it is.
There it is.
Ooh, there it is.
Yeah.
Ooh, there it is.
Because what is Tereré, right?
Ooh, there it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
There it is. Oop, there it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
American culture rubbing off on the greats.
Yeah.
That's
whoop, there it is. Whoop, there it is.
That's amazing.
Oop, there it is.
It's an interesting
kid from the favela that went worldwide.
You never
went
know,
around the
man.
world and influenced the whole world.
Oh my gosh, man!
With jiu-jitsu style and his matches.
You remember
epic matches
when Marcelo Garcia got the black belt and they wrestled, and he went to pull his X guard and he jumped right through it. He knee slid with his right leg, and then he stepped over and then triangled him, and it was like, "Welcome to black belt," you know, "Welcome to black belt, my friend." And that was I remember Lloyd and I were sitting there and we're like, "Holy cow!" Like that right there, because that was the match, that black belt world final, and at medium. Was that medium or
middleweight?
Middleweight, yeah. So that was that. I mean, and I had some other. After I won the pants, or black belt pants, my first year I got second, and then I went to Brazil, and I beat a guy, and then I wrestled. I don't remember if that was the year I got hurt or. I hurt my knee 1 year when I was down there, and and I beat a guy like 10-0 in Brazilian at the Worlds. And Helson Gracie came up to me and he said, you know, I thought you got your black belt too fast, but you come down to Brazil against a good black belt and you win like that. Like, I was wrong. You deserve it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are those things that you'll never forget, right?
Yeah. I was like, damn. You know what I mean? Like, to go out of his way to walk over to tell me that, it was just so meaningful, you know, from somebody, you know, of his caliber.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Freaking Helson Gracie, man.
Yeah.
The shark.
Yeah, so those little things, right? That mean so much,
Right.
More than any big tournaments, like those that respect, right?
Right.
That respect.
Right. Then I had to wrestle Roberto Godoy, right afterwards. And I was tired, bro. I was tired. My grips were a thing, and he had to buy the first round. And he has grip strength out of this world. What a phenomenal competitor he's been.
Yeah.
You know, he's still submitting everybody,
still.
right? And he didn't submit me. I lost on points. It wasn't a bad match, but I was, you know, fresh against tired is tough. So I would have liked to have had that match fresh against fresh. But hey, that was time number 3 where I was one match away from medaling at the World.
You're a part of history, you know. You're a part of history that we're never gonna get it back, right?
Right.
And it was a time, right? It was
Right.
a time. Going to Juku Tennis Club, like some of those epic matches, right?
Oh my
The
God.
old school.
Oh, the Hodger Jacare match. I mean, you'll never say anything like that.
Yeah.
You'll never say anything like that again. I mean, never say never, but you're probably never going to say anything
they
like
made
that
rules
again.
now to, you know, they'll stop the match or whatever.
Yeah.
There's all these rules now.
Yeah. I remember Lloyd and I, or when Marcelo Garcia wrestled Hodger, and I lost money on that because Lloyd looked at me, he's like, he's going to sweep him. I'm like, no, he's not. Listen, Shorty, he sweeps everybody. He's going to sweep him. I'm like, no, he's not. He's like, how much you want to bet? I was like, all right, 100 reais or something, right?
I remember getting Marcelo Garcia's, it was VHS tapes, I think, still. On his X guard. Remember that? The instructionals?
Yeah. And Hodger had
like replaying the thing. I'm like, what's he doing? He's swooping everybody.
Hodger had him in the mount.
I think after he won the 80cc the first time.
Yeah. Hodger had him in the mount. And was winning like 20-0. And guess what happened?
He recovered, swept him.
And swept him. He recovered and swept him. I was pissed. You're winning 20-0. And he swept him. He was like, I told you. He sweeps everybody, Shorty. My Master Lloyd impersonation. So then let me just talk about my Master Lloyd
I wanted to
affiliation.
Talk about just that time too with Master Lloyd and just the, you know, powerhouses that he had there too, your training partners.
Oh my gosh. It was so much fun. So that's the guy who really was the first guy that taught me the difference between a coach and a cheerleader, you know, and just watching him, because he's not sitting there on the side yelling like a madman, go, go, go. He's very intentional, you know, left hand, right side. He's going to turn into you. You got to watch his right foot. When he opens up, we're going to step over, we're going to pass. And so I learned to coach very intentionally, move by move, playing people like a joystick. But we met as a purple belt and a blue belt. And he invited me down. Back then, we talked by phone. There weren't cell phones or anything. I used to call 449-KICK was his phone number. Yeah, right? Not quite rotary, but, you know. And I'd call down there, and I'd talk to his mom, Miss Rose, and, you know.
I remember that, yeah.
She'd invite me down, or, you know, come on down, and I'd see her at the front desk. And what a beautiful woman. You know, she passed cancer.
Rest in peace,
She's an amazing woman. And so I'd go down there, and Lloyd would just beat my ass, you know, but nobody could beat my ass. So it was like, but it was rough. Like, he was rough, you know, like if I put my hand on the mat, he's freaking taking my arm in a very, like those collar drags. It was just very rough. And so I was always kind of sore. And so I would go down like twice a month and train with him. And I was still at Yamasaki, and Yamasaki didn't like it. Mario didn't like it because there was, you know, a whole, you know, when Lloyd left, like Mario wanted him to stay with him, and Lloyd was like, no. And so I was committed to being good, and there wasn't anybody that could beat me, you know, like when I got my brown belt, I wrestled. They put Nakapan, Neto, Francisco Neto, and Murillo Santana to wrestle me back to back to back. And I think I tapped all of them out in a combined 2.5, 3 minutes for all three of them put together. And so I would go to Lloyd's. Lloyd would kick my butt, but I would learn, and then I would bring it back, and I would teach. I would teach them everything that I learned, and we would go to seminars. And I'd go to Higa Machado seminars, and I would go to Eric Paulson seminars. You know, that knee bar that I do is an iteration from what I learned from Eric Paulson as a blue belt. And so I was constantly, Mike Moses, Nakapan, and I were always traveling to try to get information. And then I would bring it back, and if I could beat you with it.
It wasn't like it is now where you buy instructionals everywhere. Like stuff is on training set websites and YouTube and streaming matches.
Yeah, exactly. So Mike Moses would say, they'd go, oh, do you have a video camera? And you go, I've got Todd. Todd will remember everything. And I would just, you know, Eric Paulson and Higgin and those guys, they always wanted to spend the most time with me because I was the highest belt guy there, and I would just absorb. Oh, I was talking about Margarita, the way Margarita absorbs. And I heard that he had gone to train with Hickson one time after he won the Black Belt Worlds. And Hickson was like, all right, I'll try. You know, he said this, you know, he's so incredible. He learns so fast that, you know, you remember the time when Hickson invited all the Black Belt World Champions up after the Worlds and he submitted everybody? Do you remember that story?
Well, he went to Gracie Barra. I remember he went to Gracie Barra and submitted all the, you know, the Black Belt champs.
Yeah. Exactly.
Back in the day.
Yeah. After the World. After everybody had...
It was like early days. I'm not sure if they had the Worlds already yet.
No, they did.
They did?
Yeah.
Because, I just heard that story.
Right.
Maybe it was like the first or second World, possibly.
And I don't know about no, I'm talking about in the 2000s.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard about about that.
Yeah, they all went up to his California school, and he freaking submitted everybody.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
And Margarita wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't talk about the training. He would just say it was fun, you know. And then, but I heard from somebody who trains with Hickson, it was like, yeah, like, you know, Hickson was impressed with Margarita, just his sponge and the way that he would learn. So anyway, I wasn't quite on that level, but out of the group, like, you know, I was the human recorder to try to bring information back to our guys. Amory Batech, like Mario brought Amory Batech up. He showed me some sick stuff. That guy's amazing. Dude, he went 10 years undefeated, you know?
Yeah, he came here. It was really nice.
What a cool guy too, right? Yeah. And so so that's how we would learn. So I met Lloyd, and then I would go down there, and we would talk on the phone about positions. I go, well, I'm hitting a Kimura from here, my left foot's here, and we would literally verbalize everything that we were doing over the phone. And he'd go, all right, when I see you, I'll think about what you're doing, and then I'll talk to you. So I had questions, and we're purple belts, and then he's a brown belt, and I'm purple belt, and we're like phone coaching. You know, oh, okay, well, invert that position. And really, the lack of access to material forced us to think more about things because we had to really try to understand what the hell was going on. Like, well, he'd go, all right, well, understand you can do that from every dimension. So just put that in your computer and rotate it 360 degrees. Now, where are you? What's changing? Well, gravity, what's your contact point now? Well, I was on my knees, now I'm on my back. All right, well, what's that do to your legs? Like, where's your leg? Where's your left leg? Where's your right leg? And literally have these coaching sessions because we're 45 minutes apart to talk through, and then you go, all right, I'll see you, come down next week and we'll roll. And I'd go down there and, you know, get my ass whipped and come back, and it was great. and just really propelled me. So I was the first guy that Lloyd ever let into his school that wasn't a part of his school. And so I started having this huge love for Lloyd, but he was real secretive back then. And
like everybody else was too, all the Brazilian
yeah,
teams.
but he had a very like standoffish, like people, you know, he's not a talker. He's not going to come up to him and be like, hey, how you doing? Hey, not like I am. He's more guarded. And I remember we're in Brazil, and I was and I remember asking him, I said, man, why do you like me so much? And he said, because you're loyal. And I said, how do you know I'm loyal? He's like, because I've tested you. I've set you up a few times, and you've never said a bad word about me. I'm like, well, first of all, that's not okay. Don't be setting me up, man. He's like, no, I just ask people to ask you things. Or he's like, and you're always you're always loyal. I'm like, I'm a loyal dude, man. You know, like you've never, why would I, you know, like you've helped me so much. In the movie, the Matrix, you know, I always fashioned myself as Neo, and he was definitely Morpheus. He was the guy that freed my mind. I would always tell people, like, he's the freaking Morpheus, man. If you want to free your mind so that your mind can think, go to him and take the red pill or the whatever pill from the movie it was. He will open your mind to how to learn jujitsu. You know, he's not giving you a fish, man. He's freaking teaching you how to become a world-class fisherman. He wants you to be able to use your mind. You know, he doesn't want to have to teach you everything. And he taught me systems and stuff. And then, so from, you know, my blue belt and a purple belt, and I was already good, and I was already gifted, and I was already moving in a good direction. And then he really just opened my mind up to systematizing things and, you know, beating people on hand transitions and beating people in the transitions and transmission before submission and top, bottom, perpendicular, and parallel. And then starting to think in those type of different paradigms of like, of moves, not as moves, but as space, and like, where are you in space and time, and how do you define
the timing?
that?
Yeah,
you know, and then say, okay, well, if passing the guard is a perpendicular position, well, then I want to get perpendicular. Well, that makes perfect sense with my outside of in knee cut, because if I step out, I'm moving more to perpendicular, right? Or my Margolis shrimp, you know, as I bridge and I get you to fall off to one side, we're no longer parallel, moving to perpendicular. And so, you know, I credit him, and I just, you know, I love that guy, man. He's freaking family to the bone. Like, I was the first person to get a Team Lloyd Irvin tattoo on my leg, this bulldog on the side. And then people started getting, he's like, Shorty, you always causing me problems, Shorty. Now everybody wants that tattoo. You know, I'm like, well, I'm sorry, bro. I love you, man. Nothing you can do about it. You can keep kicking my butt, but you can't stop the love, man. You've been too instrumental in my life just to really just. So anyway, so then when I left, when I started to leave, I wanted to go under Lloyd, but Lloyd didn't have his black belt long enough and hadn't been recognized by IBJJF. So he's like, man, go under Pedro Sauer with Mike Moses, because they were with Evolve and Frank Cucci and these guys, and Greg Nelson and a bunch of really good guys. Eddie down in Eddie in like Atlanta. There's a guy named Eddie in Atlanta who's been around a long time. I can't think of his name right now. Really good guy. So all these guys are waiting to get there. Pedro hadn't given out a black belt yet. So we went to out to Utah to train. And of course, I murdered everybody, right? And so Pedro Sauer gives me a black belt off of his wall, like takes the Gracie stripes off it. I still have it, you know? And there was like, he gave me the black belt at the Gracie Worlds, but then people were mad, and he's like, don't put it on. So I waited a month till he came, and he promoted Greg Nelson and some other people. I think maybe he had already promoted Greg, but he didn't want me to be second, because Greg Nelson had gone through like cancer, and amazing guy too. So he had promoted him, but people were mad that I just joined the team, and I'm beating out guys that have been there 10 years, and I'm a 5-year guy. Frank Cucci's SEAL Team 6 guy. So he came up for my black belt ceremony, and I think now he had promoted Frank, and Frank came up because Frank was like, you know, I think Todd's a lot of tricks, and I don't think he's that good, you know. And I submitted him 6 times in 10 minutes, and he was a world champ. And I submitted him with 3 basic chokes and then 3 fancier moves, you know, leg locks and stuff like that. And I remember I have a picture of him sitting on the side of the mat, just like, fuck, what just happened, right? And afterwards, and he said to me, you know, because Frank Cucci's a good dude and a world-class athlete, you know, he's legit. Filipino martial art, he's SEAL Team, he's badass, right? Yeah. But afterwards, he came up there, he's like, man, I was wrong. Like, you're freaking everything they say you are, you know? And so, and that was cool. You know, those moments are cool. So that was that. And then I ended up, Mike was wanting to do his own thing, and then we left Pedro, and then I went under Lloyd. I never left. So even when I competed, if you go back and look at those, like my Pan Am run, I had a Lloyd Irvin patch on my leg and a Pedro Sauer patch on my back.
See. Gotcha.
So I never, you know, I wouldn't completely abandon Lloyd, and Pedro knew that. And I just wanted to compete, man. That's all I want to do. Give me somebody who can sign off on me so I can go to
Maryland. You guys have the relationship for all those years. Yeah.
And he's been, you know, he's the one that had brought me there. Yeah. And Pedro Sauer has been wonderful to me, and he's friends. We're still good friends, you know, to this day. He's a warrior. He's legendary. I mean, he freaking like choked out Chuck Norris way back in the day when Chuck Norris was in Brazil. Nobody knows that story, but I mean, like, you know, it's just it's very. I've been blessed to have.
Yeah, he's the one that who brought like so much jiu-jitsu to the U.S.
Yeah.
His place of jiu-jitsu in America is, man, Pedro Sauer is like synonymous with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're in the know.
And he's another unbelievably charismatic guy. He could run for president. I mean, you just can't not love the guy, you know? Super smart. You'll find that most black belts are very smart. You know, he was a stock trader and like, you know, you see the really successful guys, like they're all pretty bright guys, you know? It's impossible to be really good at this sport without having...
You have to problem solve, right? You have to problem
Exactly.
solve. You have to see, okay, this is the issue. When you're young, whatever, you're using your body.
Right.
But it's the same thing in anything you do, right?
Right. Right.
Real estate, stocks, business.
Exactly.
Same formula, same thing.
Got to come up with a plan. You got to problem solve. You got to, you know, see opportunity, and then you have to
go
act
for
on
it, try it.
Yeah, it'll work. So that was that, and then I got hurt. Right, I got hurt and herniated a couple discs in my back, and then anyway, 2019 finally came back after a 15-year layoff, 15-year layoff, and won the black belt pans. Hurt, I did that hurt. And then went to the Worlds and didn't understand the scoring, and I thought I was winning, and I was still losing because I thought the negatives.
Back in those days, no, they had scoreboards back in those days already. The little flip scoring thing, you know.
But I didn't understand the negative because I'm like, he's got a couple negatives, so I'm winning now. Like they're like, I'm like, no, I'm like, what about the negatives? He's like, that only matters. You're still losing by one advantage, and I like lifted off the. But I looked at that match again. I thought I won that match because I. Whatever. I mean, it happens. Again, one match away from medaling.
I think the most important thing is that you're out there. You're doing it, right?
I'm having fun, man.
And you're like, you spent like 2 hours with the guys last night, like just talking about stuff you've learned along the way, telling stories like crazy, you know, and inspiring and helping people be better, right? And
well, what
is that worth?
What's legacy now?
Right.
As we were talking about downstairs, it's legacy. It's knowledge. Knowledge cannot be carried to the grave, right? It disappears when you disappear, and so I'm very intent on transmitting what I know while I'm able to transmit it, because having this type of physical knowledge. It's kinesthetic knowledge, right? You have to put your hands on somebody. They have to feel it. You can make a bunch of DVDs, but until you feel like the strength of Marcelo Garcia's legs, until you feel, the front headlock of Sergey Beloglazov, the Russian world champ, which I did when I was 16 at a summer camp, and he picked me as his partner, and he freaking almost choked me to death. But those things I remember because I was like, holy crap, that's the tightest front headlock I've ever felt in my life.
Shami putting me in side control when I was a blue belt at the Gracie Barra.
Yeah.
And that was like, that's pressure.
Right, exactly. You can see that in a book.
That's pressure.
Right, but those are things. So, and to be able to pass that knowledge on to my 4 sons, to my 3 daughters, to the next generation, to my nephews, and so I'm so intent on being healthy, which is why I'm going to Chipsa Hospital. I'm here, and thank you for having me at your school and being able to teach, and Ed Clay and Scotty from On the Mat and their whole team at Chipsa Hospital, and they're taking really good care of me. CPI, Cellular Performance Institute. So I'm going down there tomorrow, and I'm having more injections in my back and maybe my neck. My neck is doing a lot better from before, so probably just lower back. And again, people say, well, why are you doing that? Why are you spending all this money and investing? Because I can't transmit this data hurt. I can't transmit this data hurt. And it's important to me to be able to transmit this information to the next generation that's been so instrumental in my life. It's kept me on the right path. It's saved my life in so many instances. It's given me the confidence, and guys have come up, some guy, came up to rob us, and I looked at him and I just said, I'm not the one, man. And he looked at me and he waved the dude off in DC, and they had, I'm sure they had guns or knives or something, and I just looked at him and just said, I'm not the one. And he looked at me and was like, you know what? There's somebody else easier. Well, jiu-jitsu has given me that ability to look somebody in the eyes and just go, not today, man. Don't do it, right? I'm not going to call the police, go bother somebody else. So in this crazy world that we're living in, there's so many benefits to, you know, the little kids and the bullying. And we live in an amazing neighborhood. You don't think there's bullying? And I've freaking 5-year-olds. Their parents are like, yeah, he's getting bullied at school. And I'm like, he's getting bullied at school?
Or they're the bullies, right? Too.
Yeah. Or, you know, if I find out they are in my class, you know, they're going to get the hammer, you know? And but in order to do that, you have to stay healthy.
Right.
So, you know, CHIPS a Hospital and CPI, Cellular Performance Institute, and Scotty and Ed, you know, that's how we reconnected last year.
Right.
And so I'm grateful for that and being able to, this sport.
They put us. It was nice. It was a nice week, right? Like
it was amazing.
Like a reunion. We never got to hang out before. We got to meet each other, and then like Mo. Who else was there that week? The week of me, you, Mo.
You had what's his name? The Florida boy.
AJ.
Yeah, AJ
Agazar.
stud. And then you had the guy from Denver, who was Denver, right? And Denver and I had a lot of fun. We cracked up laughing. And you had the girl who's actually having surgery today.
Okay.
The Royal Lion, Carlos Kemmerer, and his beautiful wife. Prayers to her. And so yeah, it was an amazing group, and we laughed and we cried.
And we were like getting out of the car.
Yeah.
On the Wednesday night.
We all went to dinner together. And Mo from the ADCC, Mo Jassim, unbelievably generous. Yeah. That dude is he's freaking top notch, man.
Bought us dinner
every night.
Yeah.
Every night that we went out, man, the guy freaking, you know, wouldn't let me put my hand in my pocket. Just wouldn't let me.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't believe just how utterly kind he was.
Invited us to ADCC.
Yes,
right?
I went to the ADC with one of my students. Like, he was just, that guy's top notch, man. I can't say, you know, and he's funny as hell, man.
Yeah.
And he doesn't put up with any shit. I mean, that dude is freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
So
God bless, right? That he just what he did with the ADCC.
That's unbelievable. From 2002 when I competed in the trials to now, it's just not even close. I did another one in a super fight. They flew me down to Florida floor, and I wrestled Avalon again, and it went to overtime. It was a very close match. I forgot exactly what happened in overtime. I mean, it was points. Maybe it was like 2-0 or something like that, but much closer than the first time. So I've always tried to learn from my mistakes, you know, and go back and watch and not get submitted the same way again. So I got submitted by a heel hook from Avalon. I've never been heel hooked again. You know, that was freaking 2002 or something like that. And that was my first time like doing heel hooks, because I never trained heel hooks prior to that. Never. All the way up. Like, dude, I still never heel hook. I've never hit a heel hook. I just believe that my jiu-jitsu is good enough that I don't have to heel hook you. I don't like heel hooks. I don't think, you know, I mean, I get it, it's a part of the game, but I just don't think that blowing somebody's knee out is really a worthwhile endeavor in the game. If you want to do it, that's fine, but I don't hit them. Like, I'm going to choke you and beat you in other ways, leg lock you, but I don't, even my students said, I'm like, you can try to hit them on me. I know how to escape them, but I don't hit them on anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody. I'm getting soft. I'm getting old and soft, man. But I mean, that's a you know what I'm saying? I'm like,
man, so how long have you been being in the jiu-jitsu journey?
September 97. So,
97.
Yeah.
So that's
we're
17.
at 25 and a half years.
Yeah. So what are your 25 plus years? What are your favorite things about this journey?
Listen, the stories in Brazil. I mean, we got arrested by the police with Brandon Vera and extorted, and one of the guys, we had like 5 guys down, and somebody bought some weed outside of Help nightclub, and it was a setup, and then they split us in different cars, and I'm like, the cops with me, and the cops got me at gunpoint taking money out of my accounts, ATMs,
wow,
and drove us back to our hotel, and the guy's telling me the whole time, like, hey, it's you know, it's just, you know, drugs are bad, and this and this and this. And it was funny because that trip, like, I'd hurt my knee, and so I'm like running on my knee, and I'm like knocking on everybody's door. The cops are they got us over there. We're gonna hit if we don't show up tomorrow, you know, call the embassy and blah blah blah. Right? And so
call the embassy.
Right? and we so anyway, so I get back, right? So I left him in the car. He wanted more money, so we went back up to my hotel. I ended up giving him like $1,300. It was a lot of money, right? For a little bit of weed. Somebody bought some weed, right? So then I go back. We go back to Copacabana, and the cop is there. And there was this guy with these steely, like, gray eyes. He was a straight killer. You could tell this cop was a straight killer, right? And he comes back and he says, he hands the drugs back, the weed. It was like a brick. Somebody had, like, broken a brick off, right? One of these guys, and they put it back in the guy's hand, right? And I'm like, please put that out of the car. I'm not getting arrested again. 10 feet or detained and extorted. They're going to give it back to us and stop us like in 10 feet, which they probably wouldn't have, now looking back. But, and I really should have let the guy, I mean, the whole place was traumatized. Everybody should have been able to spliff on the, I wasn't never a weed guy. I wanted to go out and drink. I didn't want to calm down. I'm a hyper guy, right? So I probably should have smoked weed in my life, but it just was never my thing. And so, anyway, so we got that out. That's a funny story. Brandon Vera and I still talk about that, man. It's, that type of stuff, like those stories.
Adventures, yeah.
Yeah, like not knowing that not knowing how to turn on the hot water in Brazil for my first 2 years down there. So I was taking cold showers the entire time. Well, July down there is wintertime.
Right.
So it was cold. And then finally somebody comes in there laughing. They're like, oh, man, you just got to hit this pilot light on the water heater on the wall. I'm like, freaking hell, man. Like, I've been taking cold showers for 2 years down there. I just figured they didn't have hot water, man. Like, whatever, you know?
You didn't ask anybody?
I didn't know how to do it, man. My Portuguese was still coming along, man. I wasn't like you, So I'm like, Paul, it's cold water, man. It's okay. Makes me feel tough. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I feel good. Hey, you want to take a shower today? Nah, I'm okay, man. I'm just gonna wipe my balls. It's good. It's okay, man. Let me tell you the story, man, with Hoist, right? So he's in town. He's going to the radio station. This was back like right after he fought Sakuraba.
Okay.
And we're outside of a Starbucks, and I get out of the car, and just by happenstance, he gets out beside me, right? And he's got an entourage of people, and they go, and I look at him, and I go, Hoist, you motherfucker, listen to me. If you want to train private lessons with me, you will call me like everybody else. You are not going to stalk me in my hometown. Do you understand? And like the whole crew with him, they're looking at like, uh-oh, this is not going to be good. And Hoist looks around. He goes, crazy motherfucker, man. Crazy motherfucker. Everybody in Brazil knows Margolis is a crazy motherfucker. How you doing, my friend? Right? And everybody, like, they exhale like, oh, my God, okay, this is not some nutball up on this guy. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? Right? And he's like, I'm like, what happened to your eye? And Hoist. Like, Hoist. Like, he's the freaking nicest guy on the planet, right? I wouldn't have done that with, some of the other.
Always Gracie, but yeah.
The legend, man. That's just why we all do it, man.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have, there are other guys that we won't name names that I certainly wouldn't have had the balls to do that to. But I knew Hoist was such a nice guy. And so so he's like, man, you won't believe it. I fight 40 minutes with Sakuraba, not a scratch on my face. I do a commercial, and they hit me in the head with something, and he got like 5 stitches in his head. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh, man. Yeah. We all know that fighting's the easy part, right? Fighting's the easy part. So stories like that, and Anne-Marie and Joe Moreira and Marco Huas and, going to the early UFCs and Renzo Gracie. You want to talk about the nicest guy on the planet? The nicest guy, Renzo Gracie, right? So at the time, I was the guy beating all of he had the Mateague brothers, like Scott Mateague. And I remember the first time he beat me, and then I came back and I choked him out, and Renzo Gracie was like, arm's distance away. And then I wrestled Ricardo Almeida. I wrestled Flavio Almeida. And I was a purple belt. Like I would just try to wrestle him. And then at Ricardo, Flavio, I went 0-0, but I was stalling, right? I wasn't doing jiu-jitsu. I was just staying away from jiu-jitsu, trying to shoot, and then he'd pull, and I'd try to shoot, and he'd pull.
Tactical, strategic jiu-jitsu.
And went the distance, which was pretty amazing because Flavio was sick, And then so then I wrestled at Joe Prioli had this thing, rest his soul, another guy passed to cancer, and these are the ones that started to put me on the map. And I beat So at this one was the first 4-man, and I wrestled this guy who was, I think it was a national prep champ wrestler, and he was beating me, and I end up hit him in an inside trip, and then I got to the side, and then I choked him out. It's a real big, strong guy, and I wrestled Ricardo Almeida for the first time, and he was, he was already a legend, and I think he had placed in Abu Dhabi as like silver or bronze, and he and like legitimately, it's a close match. Like if it was, I know what it was. I tapped him out in a footlock. And then they said everything was legal, and I hit him in a leg lock, and Steve Maxwell was the referee, and they said, "Oh, you turned, you reaped his knee." They were complaining I reaped his knee, and they started us up neutral. Well, freaking heel hooks were illegal. It was, everything was legal in this tournament. So I hit a straight ankle lock, and he taps, and then they start us up for a knee reap. Well, that's ridiculous. If heel hooks are legal, then knee reaps are legal, right? Because everything was legal. And so we get back up, and then like now I'm fighting for different things, and I ended up losing the match 4-2, even though I thought I should have a potential takedown at the end, but whatever, right? And so, but it was a battle, and then after that, like people were like, this was 2001, like I'm still a brown belt wrestling this top level black belt. And then I wrestled Salo. And so anyway, so we go to another tournament, and Renzo is, that's when I wrestled Alexandre the first time, and I was singing. Remember
Alexandre Ribeiro?
Yeah. And I came out and sang Let's Get It On to him. And we would have, and he wasn't speaking English very well, so I think he didn't like it too much.
Yeah.
And I caught him in a guillotine, but I didn't know to crunch. I was pulling back then. And it was a close match again. And then at the end, I got a little tired, and he passed, and I think mounted. We ended it there. He didn't submit me, and he submitted Jeff Monson. That was the first time Jeff Monson had been. Well, anyway, for third place, there was money on the line, and Renzo comes to me and he goes, "You guys wrestled 2 weeks ago. Wasn't necessarily the best. I heard what happened. You take third place and the money. I already told Ricardo he's going to take fourth
Almeida.
place. Yeah, Ricardo Almeida." So Renzo comes up to me and gives me the money in third place because we were already kind of beat up from the tournament, and we had just wrestled, I think it was like 2 weeks before. And just like, you want to talk about just quality of human beings.
That was the right thing.
Quality of human beings, okay? So then we're at a UFC, and I think this was even before this. We're at a UFC, and I'm there with some friends, and we're pretty like in the tank, and we're coming down an escalator. It's in Atlantic City. And Renzo's coming with an entourage. Now, you got to understand, like, this is 2001. Like, Renzo is the freaking, he's the man of men at this point, fighting in Pride and all that kind of stuff. Huge entourage. And he sees me at the bottom of the escalator. Now, I'd wrestled, like, Scott McTeague and choked him out. This was,
some of his guys,
within recently, right?
Right.
And he waits at the bottom of the escalator for me. I'm a purple belt. And he's like, "Hey, my friend, how you doing?" I'm like, how does this guy remember everybody? I need to send him thank you cards. I mean, he's just really an amazing human being. And I know everybody says that, but it's true. And so later that night at the after party, nobody can get into the after party. Renzo's coming in, and he sees me, and he grabs me around the shoulders and the neck and the head, and he starts walking me into the VIP only UFC after party. And the lady at the front door goes, "Renzo, you can't bring anybody in." He goes, "This is my best student. If he doesn't come in, I don't come in. Come on." And he runs me through, and he goes, "Have a good time." And he taps me on the shoulders, and he's gone. And my friends were like, holy shit. Like, they're, texting me, calling me like, "Dude, Renzo Gracie just walked you into the VIP party," and like with celebrities and stuff there.
Yeah.
Like, that's the type of guy that he is. And then at the ADCCs, I was sitting last year, I was sitting on the side of the mat. Like, I paid to be a part of the Legends seminar, and I'm sitting on the side of the mat, and somebody stole my phone. So I don't have a lot of this.
I went to,
I don't have this footage, and I'm sitting on the side of the mat, and Renzo looks up and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm learning, sir." And he says, what the fuck are you doing? And I said, I'm learning, sir. He says, get over here. And my one of my students did start taking a video at the end, and he's hugging me. Cara, you boy, where have you been? And he's hugging me like a long lost son, because you know, I haven't been on the scene. And he's on time. He's coaching with Hoyler, and he's hugging me. I mean, like embracing me, like a family member that hasn't seen me in such a long, kissing me, and like, you want to talk about feeling like, you know, part of the royal family at that point. Yeah. So, you know, those are the experiences. Yeah. And then everybody else walking around, you know, Braulio going, holy shit, it's Todd Margolis. And then he's with Hodger, and Hodger going, hey. And then Salo, and like, oh my God. And Mark Kerr using me as a partner. And like, it's never about the victories. The victories are freaking awesome to have your name in the record books, but it's the journey that makes you who you are.
The relationships, huh?
The journey, man. It's the journey. It's the traveling through Brazil and crazy. It's the kids that I remember, the young fighters from South Africa who went into Rocinha and never came out. So white kid and a black kid. And I still see their faces, you know, when I think about them. And I think their parents don't know what happened to them because there was no communications back then. And they probably didn't hear about, this was like 2003. They didn't hear about, because you remember Lloyd had a school with Baby and Rocinha. They had Rocinha Jiu-Jitsu. And they could walk up and people would meet them at guns going up and stuff like that. So there's like all of this crazy stuff. I met a little boy, Hodger, right? Hodger, I met him in the airport. His mom worked at the airport, okay? And we were pen pals, and I gave him a T-shirt, and I signed some stuff for him. And I was like a purple belt back then. And my girlfriend was a Brazilian, and we were pen pals, and I would send him like pictures and things like that. And he kept all that up on his wall, and he didn't come from much. And he would say, this is my American friend. One day I'm going to be something because I have this champion American friend, right? And so we lost touch, but I'd gone to visit him on one of my trips. I flew down there. I stayed with him. The whole place was like as big as this one room. We all slept in the same room on the same, you know, they pulled out mattresses. We all slept together, right? The whole family and we all slept together. And Georgie and Lais and their daughter now, who was a baby then, now she's grown up. She's getting married. Like they're going to come visit me. But anyway, we found each other again through Facebook. And I wrote a letter for his visa. And he had all of my pictures, all the T-shirts I sent him, everything that I'd ever sent him, he had kept. He had it all, which was like so humbling to me and just like profoundly moving. And I wrote him this long letter about our relationship and that, you know, he was a good candidate to get a tourist visa and that he should be able to come visit me and I will, you know, and I'll make sure he gets back on. And he got the visa and he came to visit me, and now he's a grown adult and he's gone to college and he's a lawyer and doing great back in Brazil. Now, I credit it to his family, but his family's like, you know, oh, Taji, you know, bendiciones, you know, and God for you, and you always motivated Hodger to be, you know, something, you know, he's always talked about his American friend, my hero, American friend. And, you know, he's an amazing, amazing human being. Like, that never would have happened without jiu-jitsu. And I mean, literally doesn't get any better than that. And I don't feel like I really did anything because, you know, like that's in the individual. Hodger's an amazing person. He has an amazing family and amazing support. But just to be a small part of that, just to be able to see him here and introduce him to my family and to hug him and to take him to dinner and to remember him as a, you know, 8-year-old boy, you know, from the airport that I met when I missed my flight and I got stuck in the airport overnight, you know, like stuff like that, you know, so many amazing, crazy stories that we could spend days talking about. And as I think about them now, it's like they come flooding back, you know. But that's the journey. That's the gift of jiu-jitsu. You know, the self-confidence and everything. But the journey, I can go anywhere in the world and somebody will open a door for me. Give me a place to sleep, like you, right? So grateful.
Crazy, right?
So grateful.
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world, right? And you know, you can always come. You can, hey, Todd, hey, Alberto's here. Let's go. Yeah. Let's go. And it's exciting. And it's just that brotherhood and family environment that jiu-jitsu brings, and it's a, you know, the honor It's amazing. Like that. I wish that for everybody. If you could wish one thing for somebody, like that's what I want to wish. And that's why I want to be healthy. That's why I'm here and going back down to CPI, is to be able to transmit this amazing gift to the next generation in a world that desperately needs it.
That's it. Everybody's on their computers, cell phones.
Right.
We need that human connection.
Right.
We need the real stuff.
Right. And we need to build warriors. You know, the world needs warriors. You know, although drones might be able to do all the warrior stuff for us in the future, we need the warrior spirit. You have to know inside of you that you can push to different places and share those bonds with people. So that's, you know, I mean, there's obviously more we could talk about, but that's my jiu-jitsu story in a nutshell, man.
Yeah.
You know, and why I love it so much and the people that I'm grateful for. And from Mario Yamasaki to Fernando Yamasaki, his brother, and seeing his family in Brazil and the things that they did for us in the sport. And you know, everybody's got their place in history, you know, so, and Lloyd, obviously, and your place in history. And gosh, I wish I would have known that you spoke English back then. So crazy, man. He was such a monster. Such a monster, man. I remember looking at you like, I think he's mean. He looks mean. Does he look mean to you? Yeah, he's definitely mean.
Too serious.
He always looks serious. He looks angry. I'm not talking to that guy. I like to have fun. I want to go have fun. That guy's not having fun. Does he look fun to you? No, he doesn't look fun. And his Portuguese is too good. Not talking to him.
Right on, brother. Man, such a pleasure to spend time with you and at Chipsa, at CPI, and to have you here this week. You know, that's look forward to seeing you again here. Hopefully, come to Chips Out again. And how can people find you?
Oh yeah, so a couple things that we have going on, right? Is you can follow me on Instagram at Todd Margolis, the Margolis Shrimp. Obviously,
we didn't even
get to that, right? My whole
We're running out of time.
revolutionary mount escape system.
Talk really quickly about it.
So I started that. My second match was Shanji. Got tired, and then he ended up mounting me, and it was like brutal. And then it's like, what do? You turn over because. You know, letting somebody rear naked choke, he's like, oh, I got submitted. But no, really, you gave up. You gave up, right?
But how to shrimp escape correctly, the right way, the most efficient way.
Correct. The normal shrimp that everybody's been doing, it just doesn't work at a high level, not very effectively. And so, you know, it was a conversation with Pedro Sauer about something that Hickson had talked about which side to go. And so I started developing it in 2008. When I was living in South America in Colombia. Oh yeah, and I got my school in Colombia. Like there's so much we could talk about. You know, I'm the godfather of jiu-jitsu in Colombia. And in 2016, I went back. Speak fluent Spanish. And, you know, I got threatened by some dangerous people and had to leave and all kinds of crazy. That's a podcast for another day.
We'll hang out another day.
My Colombia exploits, right? And yeah, so anyway, so I started putting together this like new shrimping, and like one thing led to another, and head on the mat systems, my head in the box systems,
right?
You know, my structure, the stuff that we've been talking about.
BJJ Fanatics,
yeah,
right?
BJJ Fanatics, and then I'm also going to be on Athletes Ocean. I just haven't had time to put stuff on there, but Jason Nolf and those guys over at Athletes Ocean, Athletes Ocean. So I'm going to be on there. But follow me on Instagram. There's stuff on there. But the Margolis Shrimp, there's.
You told me the story about one of your students, right? They went to Cyborgs, and nobody could knows that he's like, don't take them out in the sky.
Yeah, he's placed twice now at the Masters Worlds, and everybody, the joke is, and his name is Carlos Moyano, that everybody says, and then I have my other black belt is Damian Martinez in MMA Colombia, freaking doctor. He's an amazing guy, right?
Yeah.
And Moyano is so funny, man, because he's not a big talker. And he's like, nobody can mount me. And I'm translating from Spanish, but he's always like, you know, I'm like, well, do you tell Margolis Shrimp? He's like, nah. Like, do they ask you, how do you get out? He's like, nah. He's like, if they don't ask me, I don't tell. I'm like, well, I'm trying to, you know, spread the word, man. It might be helpful. 2.5 years at one of the biggest schools in the world with all these world champs, and you don't, for once, tell them Margolis Shrimp, you know? Thanks a lot there, buddy. But, so
I want to be able to keep escaping out of the mount.
Nothing's going to change. I don't care what you teach somebody, they can't stop it. If you do it properly, they can't stop it. And so this passion for watching guys suffer from the bottom, and we talked about this last night. If you don't fear the mount, nothing else matters. Like nothing matters. Because listen, you go to take my back, I roll to the mount. I roll the mount. I give you the mount because I'm going to escape the mount, guaranteed, 100% of the time. I'm gonna beat you to the transition. I'm gonna get my hands down to your hips. I'm gonna pin your hips. I'm gonna bridge properly. I'm gonna go out the right side. I'm gonna bring the right knee in. I'm gonna get to a dominant position. I'm gonna get out to an X guard or a leg lock or a single X, or I'm gonna come back into a butterfly guard and immediately start attacking again. And people they're just not paying attention. I mean, I implore you, learn it. Go to BJJ Fanatics. Follow me on Instagram. Go through my page. Find the Margolis Shrimp. Find it online. I mean, Bernardo Faria was literally, it had like 40,000 views like within a week because he was literally like, daggone, this freaking works. You want to stop the lapel choke? It's just, they're life-changing concepts. I get probably an email every couple weeks, 2-3 weeks from somebody who sends me a random says, I bought the Margolis Shrimp and it's literally changed my game. It's changed my life, the concepts inside of it. And so it's not just about learning a couple techniques. They are concepts like your guys I introduced you last night. They were just like, this is freaking, next level stuff because I don't know every technique, but I do know that if you learn these concepts, you'll figure out where to apply them in your own techniques.
That's it.
So thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for having me, man. God bless you. May he continue to bless you. Your school is amazing. Your story is amazing. I'm just grateful. I'm just very grateful that you have me out here in this amazing place. And so I want to thank you, man.
It's an honor.
100%.